Welcome to Season 5 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education but feel like they have no options. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach who guides overwhelmed teachers through a 5-step process out of education and into a life they love. I'd like to see a world where the work of teachers is valued and respected, and that teachers have a career pathway that enables them to continue to offer value to society beyond their work in the classroom. So in this season, we'll be speaking with wellbeing experts who can help you to stay well as you plan your exit. If you're almost ready to leave and you need to redo your resume, check out my Resume Revamp digital download. It's a comprehensive guide to making your resume show off your assets. For $49.95 Australian dollars, you'll get pre-filled, eye-pleasing resume and cover letter templates in both US letter and A4 size, a lexicon of teacher terminology with a translation to corporate speak, and a bonus PDF on getting past applicant tracking software. Check out the Resume Revamp package on the product page of larksong.com.au and come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 13. Hi everyone and welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm really excited to be interviewing Seb Poole, who is the co-founder of Frankie Health and a builder of future workplace wellbeing. Thank you so much for joining us on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today, Seb.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Fantastic to be here today.
So I'm really curious. Tell us more about Frankie Health. What is that?
Sure. So Frankie Health started in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. I've been in the tech space for the past 10, 15 years, building a bunch of startups up in Asia, then back here in Australia as well. And Frankie Health, we started so that we could target the future of mental health in the workplace. How can we take all our data that we're using with our tools, project management tools, Slack, communication tools, your email and so forth, and crunch this data, aligning it with your mental health patterns so that you can understand what's impacting you and when potentially you're on the road to impacting your mental health. That's part of it, the prediction side, and then the actual solution side, we connect you with a global catalog of coaches and therapists. We're working with some large enterprises across the world, and then we've got scale up to all sizes. Mr. Yum is a fantastic customer down here in Australia. And we're really looking to how can we build the future of mental health in the workplace so that you can predict how you're being impacted and what's impacting you, and then also have that complete pipeline of solutions depending on where you are on the scale of your mental health as well.
Wow. So are you saying that you're using like AI software to monitor the language in interactions? And then is that what's happening?
So we don't go too deep into trying to understand the actual interactions because security and anonymity is really at the core of Frankie. What we look at is just your general interactions in the workplace. So it'll be something along the lines of the time you were online on Slack, or Microsoft Teams. Is that changing over a week-to-week basis? Are you working late hours, sending messages at 11 o'clock at night? And then based on the clinical assessments that we have in the platform, plus we have something called a neural network, which is a bit technical, but what it does is it's taken 22,000 data items across the way so that we can aggregate and predict on a scale of burnout where you're sitting on that chart. So Frankie combines all this data and then it will predict or help you understand what's impacting your mental health in the workplace and where you are potentially along there that you can always correct yourself. It's really an education tool for the individual, but we don't pry into the details of what you're doing, so to say.
Right, okay, so it's more like the behavior rather than the content. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. Because I know that there are apps and other, resources available where they do monitor the language that's used in text messaging or emails or whatever to look at those wellbeing sort of, the wellbeing indicators, I guess.
Absolutely. I think monitoring is a dangerous word, though, in the mental health space. It's something that we like to shy away from. We don't like to feel like you're being monitored as an employee. We like to feel like we're.
Yeah, I guess.
Absolutely.
Like I know that people have developed apps, but with the specific purpose of collecting that data. Let me put it that way. with permission. But yeah, so you're doing something quite different. Okay. So tell us more about the sort of the support network that you've built up around this information that you gather. How does that then translate into support?
Sure. I mean, Elizabeth, we have just over 1,000 practitioners globally. So we compete with existing employee assistance programs, these old school crisis hotlines that you might have in your large organizations that people jump onto that are offered by HR departments.
Yeah.
Through my history of dealing with mental health and my background of having my own trials and tribulations along the way, being involved with employee assistance programs, that crisis hotline, that branding of it is damaging to it. But then also, having that as pure the proposition where you jump on a phone or you have just a single teleconferencing call with some random therapist that you might not know or might not connect with, is the reason why these platforms have traditionally had a 3 to 5% engagement rate. We see with Frankie at least that we've got 50 to 70% engagement rate depending on the tools that you're using. We connect you with those therapists. It's like a beautiful Amazon Shopify catalog that you can run through, book in someone, whether it's a coach, whether it's a therapist, depending on what you're looking for. You're looking for something that's troubling you with stress in your career, or is it something that might be more of a family issue or a childhood issue that you're looking to kind of work through with someone that's more suitable for that? You can book it in within a 24-hour period, and we work with that global network so that we can facilitate that, making sure that everyone is credentialed.
Yeah, because when I was on my way out of teaching, I wanted to use that EAP employee assistance program, but I also was not sure if it was somehow connected to the school, if they were going to find out. And also the other question I had in my mind, I never actually used it. I know now that it is confidential and it is quite separate from the school, and that they don't know anything about it, but I didn't know that, and I was scared because I was in a increasingly toxic work environment, and I didn't want them to know my personal business. And I was also worried, like, how am I actually going to meet up with this therapist person when I'm working my butt off like 60 hours a week, and then I have to go home and cook dinner and whatever. So I never actually accessed it, and I do regret it now because I think it might have helped, because when I was leaving, I had kids in high school, late high school. Life was quite challenging, just like on a personal level, I was finding life difficult. And then I had the professional thing. And in the end, it was like, well, what am I going to pick? Am I going to pick my family and my marriage, or am I going to pick my workplace? And I decided I'd go with the prior commitment. So I stayed married and left teaching. But I know there are people where that is a real decision they need to make. And I guess I don't regret that decision in any sense. But I wonder if you'd been around at the time, if it would have been quite a different outcome for me. I could have maybe had both. So
it's a story to go through, isn't it?
Yeah. So when someone is feeling, so I have this archetype, I guess, of the sad teacher, right? So she's in her early 50s. She's been working for 2 or 3 decades as an educator, and her name's Donna. And Donna wants to get out, but she's not sure what to do next, and she's feeling really overwhelmed, maybe a little bit depressed, anxious, and just also really quite lost. And what should Donna do to access what you're offering?
Sure. I mean, thanks for sharing your story in the first place. I think we find that with many of our users of Frankie, they write in often mentioning how it was very difficult to find their existing EAP. And when you find mental health in the forefront, it's great to really tackle it and feel open to kind of approach it. And it's great in society, I think, as general over the past 2 years that we're talking more and more. It's great to have calls like this that we can talk about it as well. I think there's talking about someone that's wanting to transition, that's not happy in the workplace where they currently are. Mental health is a very, very wide field of different areas and different particulars of what you're looking into. And I think everyone's going to be on a different page as to why they want to leave potentially, or why they're not feeling content with where they currently are in their life. And there's a lot of things that you particularly need to think about. And I think if we talk about the phenomenon of burnout in general, because I think, that's 85% of people in the workplace at the moment are going through burnout. We talk about the core characteristics of that. We're looking at generally a misalignment of values between your own personal values and what you're seeing in the workplace as well, combined with emotional exhaustion and just dissatisfaction in general. I think for anyone that's really going through burnout, there's a couple of key things that you want to focus on. The first is trying to analyze or trying to reflect on what are those key values that you feel are important in your life, that you're not really having satisfied or not being satisfied in your current workplace, and something that you're looking for the future as well. An example might be that you're looking for a very inclusive environment. Over the past 2 years, we've moved largely online, and a lot of the teachers as well. I mean, most teachers, all teachers, have been teaching online classes. And anyone that's really transitioned to a 100% online remote environment, I think has found that change a little difficult, to go from having that inclusive environment of a workplace, which sometimes has pros and cons as well, but having that inclusive environment and then moving very much into just pure delivery online and that feedback method of a computer screen sitting in front of you. So it's really important to have a look at what are those key values that you're seeing at the moment with the role that aren't really ticking those boxes, and something that you're looking for. And then after you've done that reflection, I'd be having a look at, is that something of a current context in the workplace that you feel like your approach may change the outcome of what you're receiving? Is the inclusiveness because it's an adaptation to the current workplace and something that you want to change? Or is it something that you really feel like you just need to change your context in general to get out of, which there is no wrong with? I think we all need change. And I think a lot of people are searching for change, especially after, what we're coming out of as well. The other part of burnout being that emotional exhaustion element to it, it's very much looking after yourself, giving your time to not only look at those values that we've been talking about, but the time to just relax and bring yourself, to a state of calm, and trying to remove some of those external pressures as much as possible, whether it's a 10-minute a day breathing session, whether it's a meditation, or whether it is, there's a lot of people that don't necessarily enjoy sitting there and listening to a meditation by Deepak Chopra, for example, but they might find a morning walk for 20 minutes might be their time just to find a bit of calm and solace. It's those small moments that you can take which help with that reflection period to just better understand what's impacting you at the time. And that, is part and process of working through your burnout.
Yeah, I definitely find since leaving, actually during the pandemic, I did more walking than I've ever done in my entire life. It was amazing. I loved it. But I was working for myself then, so I didn't have to, be in front of a class. So I had that luxury. So, okay, if someone, realizes they do need some mental health support and they're unwilling or unable to access the employee assistance program that's offered by their workplace, how would what would be the best way for them to access what you're offering?
For Frankie, we partner with a number of wellbeing providers in Australia. So as long as the business, and we're very much a B2B organisation that works with the businesses, the organisation currently doesn't have a great employee assistance program where we're happy to connect in. Otherwise, we have a fantastic network of partners that work with direct-to-consumer, therapists and counsellors and so forth as well. So if you reach out to the team, we're more than happy to help. I would say, though, that the first and foremost is, if you are speaking to someone currently, keep that engagement running, because the conversations that you can have with a therapist and a coach might not deliver value straight off the mark, but you will see the improvements as you go 3-6 sessions down the track. And mental health, as we've always known, and I think that's becoming more prominent, is like your physical health. It's like a gym. You need to practice it on a daily basis. You need to keep the routine running. You need to keep the same habits going to keep it, improving and keep on top of it, so to say. I'm not sure about yourself, Elizabeth, but it's often, and I have in the past, when I've come under a stressful time, you tend to see everything that is good for you out the window, and you completely sink yourself into the stressful moments. But it's those times that are really important to make sure that you continue on with the healthy habits that you build up.
Yeah, I've just been listening on audiobook to James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And he talks about being the person that you're like asking yourself, is this activity or this thing I'm about to do, is that the kind of thing that the person I want to be would do? So say I want to be more healthy. Would a healthy person eat this chocolate eclair right now or whatever, you know? And maybe they would,
Absolutely.
but maybe only half of it or something, you know, I don't know. But I just, I found that approach interesting, that he's actually getting you to project forward to your best possible self, and then make decisions along the way that align with that best possible self. So thank you for just sort of explaining how your system operates. So really you're working directly with employers. But if we did want to contact to get some support, I'll put the links for that in the show notes so that people can find you if they feel like they can't trust their employee assistance program. So, Seb, are you going to move into the education space? Because I think there's a lot of fair game in there, that's for sure.
Absolutely. We're partnering with we've got some courses on with the University of Melbourne and looking at some other universities across Australia. So hopefully something soon that you'll see come out.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that could be really valuable because, I think just knowing that you can actually find out more information and make some general inquiries before you work with someone, I think that sounds like a really helpful thing. Just kind of already sussing out the person you're going to be working with before you actually work with them. It seems like a very good way forward. Yeah. So you feel confident you're making a good decision. Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what other questions should I be asking you about what you do and how you help people?
Well, I think Frankie is really focused on, as I mentioned, the future of mental health. So we've got that employee assistance part that we've been speaking about, and it's really important to have that catalogue and improve that accessibility of therapists in the workplace. But what is the future of workplace mental health? And the way that we see it is, as I alluded to at the beginning, we're very much online these days. We have a strong connection to all our online tools. You know, we're often sitting in front of our computer, using Zoom, using Slack, using Gmail, Outlook. Everything is essentially going through these systems. But we don't necessarily have the way at the moment to map how we're engaging with our workplace as the behaviors, as you mentioned before, and how did we then map that up into predictors of our mental health? So as I mentioned, we help predict burnout in the organization. We've taken in 22,000 different data items and built this machine learning model that helps you put you on a model of prediction of risk of burnout at the moment. We work with clinic-backed assessments for depression and anxiety, so you can understand how you're feeling and how you're tracking. And then we see the trends and correlations between, are you, for example, on a busy day sending 50 emails, and what we're seeing at the end result of that is the correlation between more emails being sent and poor mental health, and that's something that you need to watch, or less emails sent, which is often the case. People tend to reside and pull back, from their communication when they're feeling stressed, and some can do that. So we pick up those correlations in the workplace to help you understand yourself, help you understand what's a better way about going to the workplace. We're very much focused on the workplace and how we can support you as an organization. So very much that support tool, that support sidekick that sits there. And I'd be interested to know, I think from a teaching perspective, what is being the most stressful outcome, and where are they seeing their mental health move, and what's the biggest pain points over the past couple of years, and how Frankie Health can really jump in and help that as well.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I'm noticing is there's been a shift. I think Plato writes about the children of today and how badly behaved they are and how they disrespect their elders and sit with crossed legs, which is obviously a bad thing back then. And I feel like not a lot's changed, that people still feel that way about the younger generation, that they're disrespectful or they're rude, but I think there's also, as a result of the pandemic, or, kind of maybe exacerbated by it, a disengagement with social interaction that is playing out now in the classroom, with this real disconnect between the students and their teacher and their peers. So the social side of school has shifted as a result of the pandemic, and people just not being, or this, especially younger children, not being able to function as well socially as they might have in the past. And if you think about what was happening, a year ago, parents were trying to work from home remotely, and their children were on their devices, and no one was actually talking to each other. They were all sitting in their own little sort of headspace. And now that's being carried back into the schools where the kids are going, well, I'm not going to put my phone down and listen to your instruction today or whatever, So teachers are sort of fighting this losing battle, trying to be engaging when actually there's other stuff going on there that's out of their control. And then I think another thing that's happening is the data gathering has just gone nuts. So schools are now expected to track and monitor, and like we were talking about monitoring, track and monitor students before they even begin school. So like at the school I used to work at, before the prep students would begin the school year, they would get them in individually and do testing over the first week of school. They would bring them in one at a time and do testing so that they could give them a benchmark of where they were. And then, 5 weeks later or 10 weeks later or whatever, they would test them again. Well, it's sad for starters that's how we begin life in school. But it also puts this incredible pressure on teachers to bring these kids along to a point, where it's considered acceptable at the risk of taking away curiosity, stopping them from being lifelong learners, and stopping them from loving learning. And the poor teacher's just under this enormous pressure to create an environment where she's basically teaching to the test right from when the kid is 5 years old until they're 18, or she or he, or they. And so there's like this massive pressure to teach to the test. And then if the results aren't there, then there's also pressure in a lot of cases to fake the data, or to, bump it up a little bit, or to say, well, you showed up for class, therefore you've passed, when they mightn't have actually done any work. So, and I see this particularly in the States happening a lot. And I know it happened to me too. I was under pressure to create a bell curve in my class. Every class I needed a couple of kids at the top, a couple in the middle. And I'm like, regardless of what the benchmarks were or what the rubric stated, if they weren't on the bell curve, I had to bump some of them up, or, so that was always pretty frustrating. And then of course they get to the end and they're not able to do the work because they've had their data pushed up the whole time, all the way through school. And then they, at some point somebody wakes up and realizes, oh, hang on a minute, my child's not actually doing as well as I thought they were. And so then there's anger and recriminations, and the teacher gets the blame. So then there's teachers showing up every day thinking, I know what is best for my students, I know what they really need, and I'm being forced or obligated to give them something quite different to that. And that misalignment with their values is causing a massive stress and demoralization in the profession. And I think that's the big thing.
Yeah. And what gets you excited? What are we seeing in the workplace that getting people excited for the change? Is there change?
I think some people were actually really excited about remote learning. And a lot of the teachers who want to get out now are saying, if I could find a job that was remote, that was flexible, that actually allowed me to maybe be at home with my young children or work, outside of like traditional work hours, that seems to be something that's gotten people quite excited. There are still some teachers who really just love the classroom and love that interaction with their students, and they mourn the loss of that. But I'm seeing a lot of people saying, I'd love to have more flexible work. I'd love to be able to go to the toilet whenever I want to go to the toilet. I talk about that a lot. Drink an extra glass of water knowing that it'll be okay. And so, I think that's something that some teachers are really excited by. And even if they don't stay in education, they're now looking for other jobs that are like that, where they've got that flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, the adaptability of change is a big one with your mental health. And I think, pulling that back in, this hybrid workforce that we're building, and it's happening in all industries, is causing discontent against those that are pro it, those that are against it, because, you've got organizations trying to revert back to the old way of working. You've got those that are trying to push forward with complete distribution and purely remote. And, it's it's different preferences for different individuals. So we're going to have a period of instability over the next 2 years. And I think if anyone is out there that's feeling that instability coming through, just understand it's very natural. There's a lot of external pressures, a lot of changes that we've all gone through. It's about coming back in and really trying to focus on it. I think what you said earlier, that you've been able to walk more in the past 2 years than you ever have previously, is part and process of finding those really nice things that you can do for yourself, that give you the time to focus on what's important to Elizabeth, what's important to Seb, and then that's going to help you with the external stabilities or instabilities coming through.
Yeah, when I was teaching, I did have kids at school too, so that was another element. But I just couldn't. I didn't even know what I wanted to do that would be fun for me. Like the thought of getting up and going to the gym at 5 a.m. was not sparking joy for me at all, because I was, struggling to get out of bed because I didn't want to go to work. So the thought of jumping out of bed and going to the gym beforehand, it just wasn't even on my agenda. Then I did go for a few walks, like in the afternoon after school, a few times. But again, I was exhausted and I just really needed to still come home and cook dinner and all those things. And so, especially in the winter in Melbourne, when it gets dark quite early and it's freezing, and the last thing you want to do is be out doing anything, you just want to snuggle up at home. I just found that, I wasn't really proactively looking after my mental health or my physical health. And so, it's been much better for me being out, just because I've had to look around and go, okay, what do I need to do so that I get to be my best self in a different context that's outside of school? So helping teachers to be their best self while they're planning their exit, I think that's a real priority for me at any rate right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I think that exit point is a really great time for the individuals to reflect, get through the period of the actual exit, but know that just afterwards, if you can spend that time, if you can spend a little bit of time thinking about what that exit meant to you, and what it ticked on your boxes, what it didn't tick on your boxes, and what you're looking to move into next, both personally and from a career perspective, you're going to find a lot of clarity that's sitting there.
Yeah. Now, Seb, I've got a question that I didn't warn you about, so apologies in advance. I've been asking all my guests, this is like our final question. What's your favorite song?
Favorite song? I have I guess I have a generic answer to that because of my childhood. It was something called First Date by Blink-182, which was a childhood band I loved. I wouldn't necessarily say that's my favorite song anymore. I'm one of those that go with the flow. So I enjoy a lot of genres of music, and I could pick a different genre and tell you the favorite song that sits there.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I'm sure you have a lot of interesting answers.
Is there a type of song that you really like? Like, do you like a ballad or an anthem or?
I listen to a lot of classical music when I'm trying to relax. So, I do enjoy a lot of classical music. Beethoven's fantastic. Otherwise, listen to a lot of Kanye West, rock music. Honestly, Elizabeth, I'm agnostic to music. I love it all.
Oh, that sounds good. Okay, so are there any questions that I should have asked that I didn't ask? Anything else that we need to discuss before we wrap this up today?
I think we've covered it really well. And if there's any support that Frankie can provide for anyone, I mean, we operate globally. We've got a fantastic team down here in Australia. If anyone needs assistance or wants to chat to, any of our community, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to help.
Great. Thank you so much, Seb Poole, for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Elizabeth. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast presented by Larksong Enterprises with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. Thanks for listening. If you need more support in your journey out of education, check out larksong.com.au and book a triage call. I'm a career transition coach for educators, and I support teachers in their journey out of education and into a life they love. I've been where you are now, and you don't need to do this alone.